Go ahead.
There's a lot of conversation and a lot of debate about what's wrong with West Virginia. How can we move West Virginia forward? How will we move West Virginia forward economically? What are the key ingredients of economic development in West Virginia? It's my belief one of the missing components of our conversation around economic development and economic growth is that we don't talk about poverty. And that might be hard for many of our viewers to really appreciate. For the last 4 years, I've had the privilege of attending the West Virginia Chamber of Commerce annual summit at the fabulous Greenbrier Resort Hotel in White Sulphur Springs. And the top 800 to 1,200 business leaders and political leaders from all over the state, they convene on the Greenbrier for this event. And much of it is about economic development. For 4 years I've went, and I've sit and I've listened to speakers, and West Virginia's congressional delegation, they always come in and speak, address, the Senate President, House Speaker, the Governor, and in the election year, they allow the gubernatorial candidates to come and also address. And they normally have some national political figure. Last year, it was Vice President Michael Spence who came and addressed the group. In 4 years of attending that conference, I've heard the word poverty mentioned one time. One time it was mentioned. And that was last year in his address, Senator Joe Manchin III used the word poverty in the context of making a statement. And he says, if you want to see abject poverty continue in southern West Virginia, then don't provide them with broadband. Don't provide them with internet service. Don't provide them with cell phone service that would cover the entire southern part of the state. That's the only time I've heard the word poverty mentioned at the Chamber of Commerce. I Googled West Virginia University the other day. I think they have 125 majors. I put in the word poverty and I Googled it. What came back was sociology, landscape architecture, but nothing came back as a major or a minor in poverty. I've talked to some high-ranking people at WVU and asked them who has done any extensive scholarly work on how to address poverty in the state of West Virginia. They could not produce one single document. I had the same conversation with the people from Marshall University. I cannot find a single document, scholarly piece of work, that says, here's what we need to do to address poverty in West Virginia. I was appointed by the governor to be on the transition team for economic development after Governor Justice was elected. And there were in the room probably the 50 of the top business people in the state. And we were supposed to come together with ideas to submit to the governor of how to move West Virginia forward. So when I found the opportunity, I said, we need to submit to the governor that there needs to be a legislative and programming framework. We need to create a model to address poverty, and we need to recognize that poverty has to be a part of our economic development plan, because poverty is holding us back economically, is depleting the workforce. We're spending a lot of dollars to address the consequences of poverty, health issues, poor education, dropout, juvenile delinquency, teen pregnancies, substance abuse, criminal justice system. You look at our pathologies and you'll find that many of our pathologies have metastasized and are greatly exaggerated in poor neighborhoods where there are limited resources to address these problems. You would have thought that I had committed high crimes, misdemeanors, and treason to bring it up in that meeting. They were about to throw me out of the room. They didn't want to hear anything that I had to say. No conversation about that issue at all. It was basically shut down by the former Commerce Secretary, Woody Thrasher, who was chairing the meeting. Now, I wasn't expecting that type of response, but talk to politicians, both Democrat and Republicans. The Republicans say we cut taxes more, we give the business community more tax breaks, they're going to create the jobs, and that's going to address poverty. The Democrats will say, well, if we just have more social programs, that's going to address poverty. And we know that both views are historically inaccurate, that funding social programs alone do not address poverty. And we know that the trickle-down effects of trickle-down economics doesn't address poverty. What it does is it concentrates wealth. And we have history to show and to demonstrate that. The Democrats have got themselves pushed in the corner. They are afraid to talk about poverty. They're no longer the party of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. They're no longer the party of Lyndon Baines Johnson, because they fear that the Republicans are going to beat them over the head with it to say, well, you're just trying to take money from people that work and give it to money from people that don't want to work. What we got to do is have an intelligent conversation to understand in this state that had the poorest, one of the poorest states, one of the oldest states, one of the most unhealthy states, a state that's losing population, there's almost no immigration. The people that we have now are the people that's going to have to drive this economy moving forward, and many of them are among the 330,000 that are trapped in poverty. So if we don't develop a plan to address building the people and build the places where they live, we're not going to be able to drive this economy. And I'm not exaggerating, I'm not making this up. The statistics supports my position. You go to the United States Department of Labor and ask for the labor force participation statistics since 1976, and what you'll find in West Virginia has had the lowest labor force participation rate in the country every year since 1976. Now what does that mean? That we have the lowest percentage of our working age people actually employed, and we perennially have the lowest working age people that employed, and that's why we don't see much growth in terms of us moving up on the poverty level. Poverty has to be viewed not out of altruism, it must be viewed out of economic necessity and long-term economic viability and sustainability. And so my organization, Hope Community Development Corporation, we have developed the whole plan to move West Virginia ahead. And it's based primarily on a piece of legislation that's already passed and codified in law. But this executive branch and previous executive branches refuse to, I'm not going to say refuse, they have not executed the piece of legislation, and the legislature have not held them accountable to execute it. So just quickly, what is this whole plan to move West Virginia forward? First of all, it has a component of family development. Family development. Children live in houses with adults. Family has to be developed, whether it's a man and a woman together, whether it's two men together, two women together, whether it's a single female in the household, a single male in the household. That is a family unit, and we got to strengthen those family units. There's a piece of legislation that was passed that would create a project to strengthen and stabilize children and families through effective, efficient coordination of social services. It was passed first in 2012, but never executed. It was repassed in 2017, and it's still yet to be executed. We gotta focus on family development. And we gotta talk about the waste of the social service system. There is no waste in the social service system. Let me tell you why. Because all the money goes back into the economy. So the people working in the system, they buy cars, they send their children to college, they buy houses, they recreate, they buy food and clothing, they spend their money. And the 30% that gets to the recipient at the end, it's all spent back in the economy. So none of the money is wasted. It goes back into the economy to stimulate the economy. But what the money is not doing, it's not accomplishing the stated intent. And that is help break the cycle, help to stabilize people, and help move them to sustainability. And we believe that can be done, but there has to be accountability to do it. Secondly, community development. People live in communities. And so we worked for the last several years to get a piece of legislation passed that would create a pilot program to address poverty and to actually improve public health by addressing poverty, substance abuse, and other social determinants like education, healthcare, housing, workforce development, economic development, et cetera, in the context of comprehensive community development. And the Alliance for the Economic Development of Southern West Virginia, the Marshall University, and the other higher education institutions have created provides the venue to do that, community development. But the legislation has to be executed in Article 526-3. Thirdly, workforce development. Workforce development is the key to breaking the cycle of poverty. We have two pieces of legislation, both federal and state, Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, and those pieces of legislation should be implemented, and the road bond and the job bill creates the opportunity to create more jobs for West Virginians through those initiatives. And just quickly, the other one has to do with economic development, creating local economic development initiatives, education, and of course, creating better housing. We have the highest rate of home ownership, but a lot of it is shacks. And there's a bill that's been passed to use housing as a job training, employment, economic development driver. And then of course, actually helping felons get jobs, get employment so they can take care of their families. That's the whole plan to move West Virginia ahead. If you'd like to find out more about it, you can contact me at HOPEWDC@AOL.com, HOPEWDC@AOL.com, or call me at 304-343-4673. I'm out of my time. I thank you for yours.